Hi everybody, my name is Chris Barton. I live in Austin, Texas. I write books for children. I write primarily picture books, both fiction and nonfiction. And my newest nonfiction book is it's a true story about an event that happened in this country 25 years ago this month. And I want to read that book with you because I want people to remember this story. I want people to remember the way the community can come together and move forward in the midst of and following something terrible that happens. This new book of mine is called All of a Sudden and Forever, Help and Healing After the Oklahoma City Bombing. It was written by me. It was illustrated by Nicole Zhu. It was published by Carol Rhoda Books, an imprint of Lerner Publishing, and I'm reading this book today with Lerner's permission. This book is dedicated by me for Declan Asher Barton and by Nicole for my mom. Sometimes bad things happen and you have to tell everyone. Sometimes terrible things happen and everybody knows. One April morning in 1995, one of those terrible things happened in Oklahoma City. There was a man with a bomb in a big truck. He parked the truck in front of a big building in the middle of the city. He walked away. The bomb exploded. 168 people died. All of a sudden and forever, so much was ruined. The awfulness of that moment can never be undone. But the awfulness of that moment is not the end of the story. It is true that many people were hurt in many, many ways. Some lost a cousin, a niece, a nephew, an uncle, an aunt, a grandfather, a grandmother, a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, a baby named but not yet born. Some lost friends, neighbors, folks they used to see every week or every day. It is true as well that some who survived had their bodies broken in ways large and small. Some suffered damage to their minds and spirits. Some who rushed in to help saw horrible things they would never forget. Some had to leave nearby places they loved, homes, churches, a library, without knowing when they could safely return. And it is true that some found their lives flooded with anger, grief, or fear. Some came under suspicion for no good reason. Some had to accept that their own child was a bomber or had kept secrets for someone who was. Some lost hope that anything would ever be okay again. Many, many people around the world watched the tragedy and felt their own hearts break. And then, not all at once, but one by one, they turned to look at other things instead. But it is also true that all the while, one tree stood near the bombed building. This tree, an American elm, had not been much to look at before the bombing, though it did give off some shade. The blast had scorched the elm, blown debris into its branches, and left it looking worse than ever. Investigators collecting evidence considered cutting down the tree, but it was spared. It received help. Even after the building was gone, the tree survived. During the next year, people dealt with their pain in different ways, but healing doesn't always come easily. Many whose lives had been changed by the bombing asked why. Why me? Why us? Why them? Why? While waiting for an answer that may never come, many vowed to remember. They vowed to tell their stories. Their stories would keep alive those they had lost. Those stories, told and retold, would make sure the past had a place in the present. Many learned to piece their lives back together, even when important parts were gone forever. Some needed lots of help, and they received it from lots of people. Some of those helpers themselves were hurting, maybe from the bombing, maybe from something else that had happened to them before. Helpers often know how it feels to be in need, and they know from their own difficult times what kinds of aid might be needed. Families, survivors, and helpers came together. They talked, they listened, they cried, and sometimes even laughed. They fixed, they made right what they could, and began looking to the future. Some took solace under that elm tree that had survived. When the next spring came, and new seeds fell from the survivor tree's branches, someone thought to collect them. Something could be done with those. The seeds were taken to a nursery where helpers planted them, not all at once, but a few seeds at a time. While the seeds sprouted and grew, so did plans for a memorial at the place of the bombing. It would be a monument to what had been lost, but also to the community of those still living. None of them had been hurt in exactly the same way, yet they all could seek some healing in the space they had in common. As time went by, they each might encounter others in their lives, on occasion or every morning, ready for them to just move on, to stop being sad, to stop being angry, to stop being hurt. At the memorial site, they believed, they would always find someone willing to listen. They could always find someone willing to be with them. This was especially true each anniversary. When they gathered there for the second one, they found more than listeners, friends, and loved ones. They found survivor tree seedlings, grown from the seeds harvested the previous spring. There were enough seedlings for families of those who had died to take one home to plant. In front yards and backyards where everyday comings and goings mixed with memories from before the bombing, those seedlings took root and started to grow. Sometimes those elm trees were reminders of loss. Sometimes they were sources of comfort. Sometimes they were both. Many people whose lives had been changed by the bombing found new connections with each other. These included friendships, other close relationships, and at least one marriage that never would have happened if not for that terrible something they wished had never happened at all. After 5 years, the memorial opened to the public, followed by a museum. The stories they told brought visitors from around the world. A new crop of seeds got collected each spring. Over the next year, they would sprout into seedlings. At the anniversary gathering the following April, those seedlings would go to more homes, farther and farther from the original survivor tree. And when other terrible things happened, they just do. We can't stop them all. When these other terrible things happened, and people died, or were hurt, or had their lives changed, all of a sudden and forever, they received help too. Sometimes that help came from Oklahoma City. Some of those who had needed so much help after the bombing, even some of those who still needed help themselves, came forward. They provided comfort to those hurting in other families, other cities, other states, other nations. They listened to the stories of others. They shared their own. And before they returned home to Oklahoma City, sometimes they left behind a reminder of that comfort. Sometimes they left behind a seedling from the survivor tree. There will come a time, many, many years from now, when those people whose lives changed the instant of the Oklahoma City bombing will no longer be with us. Not all at once, but as decades pass, they will be gone. Likewise, the survivor tree itself will not live forever. No tree ever does. But its seedlings have been planted near and far. Those have grown into trees that have given off their own seeds. And just as the survivor tree's offspring have spread, so has the story of the tree and its survival. In various ways, this one tree with a meaningful place in our past will always be with us. The same is true of the people who first took solace from the survivor tree. After they are gone, some of those they comforted will remain among us, continuing to comfort others, who themselves will comfort still others, who will be around to comfort still more. And because of the stories so many of us have shared, we will remember the help so many needed. We will remember the help so many received. We will remember the help so many provided. We will remember. And that's all of a sudden and forever. Help and healing after the Oklahoma City bombing. Have a good day, everybody.